Hi guys, I hope you're doing well. It's Wednesday and today is going to be the last day of lecture for our class. Yay! We've made it! So yes, today is the last lecture and then Friday we're going to be doing a quiz review. Next Wednesday will be the quiz, our last short little quiz. And then the week after, actually that Friday starts Loyola Finals week. And I'm going to be sending out information as to when I will send you your final. And that's going to be going out soon. Okay, yes, if you are going into the final with an A, you don't have to take the final. So if you take this last quiz, and I will get you those quiz grades by the weekend before finals, or the weekend of finals rather, and if you get an A, you don't have to take the final quiz because I drop one of our quizzes, finals, or projects. So just some friendly information for you before we launch into our lecture. Today we're going to be talking about point of view. Now you may remember some of this from your English class. Point of view, first person, second person, third person, etc., etc. There's lots of different points of view, but today we're going to be just covering 3 different points of view. So points of view is like a fancy way of saying who and how you are telling a story, okay? So whatever you decide to choose as your point of view can affect the story you're trying to tell in your song. Okay, so let's learn about the different points of view. Sorry, my child is bugging me. Yes, honey, I'm doing a video. Yes, you can play your Lego game. You can play the Lego game. Get away. All right. Okay, sorry, distracting. So first person is someone telling you his or her story. Second person is you being told how you should do something, preaching or instructing, or when the narrator uses you as the entity doing the action. Okay, so first person is you doing the action. Second person is let's see, hold on. Second person is you being told how you should do something, like preaching or instructing, or when the narrator uses you as the entity doing the action. And third person is like a kind of a omniscient, kind of almost like a camera recording the action, recording the events in your song. That's not necessarily to say that it's an objective point of view. Your third person point of views can have opinions about what's going on, but the third person can see everything. Third person is like a narrator, thinking of it as a narrator. So a first person is personally narrating your story, whereas third person is like an outside narrator, talking about the action in your story or song. So first person is the most common type of point of view in writing, all over, when that's writing in songs, writing books, whatever. So first person tells a story from one's own point of view. And in first person, we use the words I or we to tell a story. So in first person, we use I or we to tell a story. So I'm gonna play a song for you, because when I've tried to play the album versions of the songs that I have in these lectures for examples, YouTube kicks me out. It says, no, you can't use this. So I'm just gonna play them for you. And the first song I'm going to play for you is a song called Fancy. And this is written by Bobby Gentry. It's a relatively old country song. And it was also covered by Reba McEntire, I think in the 80s maybe? Or maybe early 90s. And it tells a story of a prostitute. A young girl whose family has basically become so destitute that the mother's dying, and the mother has just had another child, that baby's dying, and the mother basically gives all of her resources to her daughter to go out and become a prostitute. So, Fancy is the name of the prostitute, and this is her story. First person point of view. Well, I remember it all very well. Well, looking back, it was a summer I turned 18. We lived in a one-room, one-down shack on the outskirts of New Orleans. We didn't have money for food or rent, to say the least. We were hard-pressed. Then Mama spent every last penny we had to buy me a dancing dress. Well, Mama washed and combed and curled my hair, and then she painted my eyes and lips. Then I stepped into a satin dancing dress that I split on the side, clean up to my hip. It was red, velvet trimming, and it fit me good. Standing back from the looking glass, there stood a woman where a half-born kid had stood. Here's your one chance, fancy, don't let me down. Here's your one chance, fancy, don't let me down. Mama dabbed a little bit of perfume on my neck, and then she kissed my cheek. Then I saw the tears welling up in her troubled eyes as she started to speak. She looked out a beautiful shack, and then she looked at me and took a ragged breath. She said, your pa's run off and I'm a real sick and the baby's gonna starve to death. She handed me a harp-shaking locket that said, to thine own self be true. Then I shivered as I watched a roach crawl across the toe of my high-heel shoe. It sounded like somebody else was talking, asking, Mama, what do I do? Just be nice to the gentleman, fancy, they'll be nice to you. Here's your one chance, fancy, don't let me down. Here's your one chance, fancy, don't let me down. Don't forgive me for what I do. If you want out, it's up to you. Now don't let me down, your mama's gonna move you uptown. Alright, so that's Fancy and her mother talking, but Fancy's the one who's telling the story. It kind of slips into a different point of view when the mother says, here's your one chance, Fancy, don't let me down. That's obviously not Fancy talking about herself in third person as Fancy, but that's her mother saying that. But for the most part, the song is created in first person. All right, the second example I'm going to be talking about is appropriately second person. And this one's a little weird. So, let me get my notes up here. So this point of view uses the word you to talk about the subject. So the person writing makes the reader the actor in the story. It's kind of like when I was a kid, I don't know if you guys had this, but we had choose your own adventure books. And so this is like a story where at the end of each chapter you have a couple choices to choose from, and you choose which one you want to make, and then that changes how the story pans out. So that's written in second person. You choose to open the door to the cellar and chase after the bandits, or you choose to abandon the house and get on the highway in your car and flee. Those are all examples of second person. Okay, so a good way to think of this perspective is that it's like when you tell a story about someone else, or you want to detach yourself from a story that you're telling about yourself. People often use this point of view when giving directions. For instance, you go down to Maine and you take a left at the stoplight. That's an example of a sentence in second person. So you use this story, or you use this point of view to tell a story about someone else, or if it's a story about yourself, you can also use second person to detach yourself, like one layer of it. So I am not going to play this second example of second person point of view because it's kind of weird, because it's a Leonard Cohen song and he's very idiosyncratic in the way he sings and the way he plays. So at this point, I want you to pause this video and go search a YouTube example for Leonard Cohen, Suzanne. Okay, so listen to that, listen to the lyrics, and that is an example of second person point of view. All right, the last point of view we're going to be talking about today is third person. And this point of view uses the words he, she, it, or they to discuss the topic at hand. So this is kind of like a narrator telling the story. a lot of times fairy tales, that's the earliest example of a third person point of view, a fairy tale. Hansel and Gretel. Hansel laid the crumbs on the forest floor so that he and Gretel could get back to their home. Okay? That's an example of third person point of view, and an outside person is telling the story. So it's not, I laid the crumbs on the trail, or she laid the crumbs, or actually rather, yeah, never mind. It's not I laid the crumbs on the trail, but rather Hansel laid the crumbs on the trail, or he laid the crumbs on the trail. Okay, so an example of third person point of view in a song is, I'm gonna use this Stevie Wonder song, "Living for the City," and this is basically just kind of a story of people who are having hard lives in cities, or actually some of them are, looks like they're in small towns, I don't know. But this is an example of third person point of view. And feel free to Google all of these songs that I'm playing if I'm not singing them clear enough for you to really understand what I'm talking about. A boy is born in hot time Mississippi, surrounded by four walls that ain't so pretty. His parents give him love and affection to keep him strong, moving in the right direction, living just enough for the city. Alright, so we're talking, this is a narrator telling the story, right? His father works some days for 14 hours, and you can bet he barely makes $1. His mother goes to scrub the floors for many. You best believe she hardly makes a penny, living just enough for the city. Alright, so an example of third person point of view. Now, one cool thing about point of view is that you can really change the timbre of the story that you're telling by changing the point of view. So as you can imagine, telling a story that happened to you directly and making that apparent in a song can be a very powerful thing. But if you want to put a little bit of a detached vibe on the story that happened to you, you put it in second person or third person. So changing the point of view can dramatically change the tenor and timbre of a story. Okay, so the examples I gave today were Fancy by Bobby Gentry, Suzanne by Leonard Cohen as an example of our second person, and Living for the City by Stevie Wonder as an example of our third person point of view. Alright, so check it out. If you need any more information, feel free to email me, and I'm sure there's a lot of talk on the interwebs about all of these different points of view, that if you need some further research, you can Google that and check it out. And this is going to be the last example of stuff that I'm going to be covering on the quiz. So I hope you guys are doing well, and we'll see you on Friday where we do our quiz review. And have a good one. I want to show you my glasses real quick. All right, bye you guys.